Everyone jumps over self-acceptance. They just beat themselves down with the problems over and over again. And so much so, they felt shame that they made them feel like the problem was them the whole time. But if you can help them see that it's just something they do sometimes, it's outside of them, and that they can accept themselves for doing that thing sometimes, then, only then you can say, okay, what are the problems? It's called restorying, and it is a way that you can, if you're working with someone, help them become untrumpified, right? De-trumpification, de-Trumpification.
Did you say de-Trumpification?
That's correct. Like denazification? Mm-hmm.
Soon to be sworn into office, president, correct?
Correct. Don't worry about politics. What we're going to talk about is if someone has what we'll call a problematic identity narrative, if there's something that they can say about themselves that they don't like and they want to change, very often they find it very hard to change, okay? I'm going to tell you the various steps that can help someone get to a point where they can change. Number one, you find the problematic identity narrative. Okay, you say, hey, you know what? One thing I do is think in zero-sum terms, just like Mr. Trump does. I think if I hurt someone else, it helps me. I don't want to think that way, but I know, I feel it, I see it. It just seems so right and true. Okay, so the first thing you do for that person is help them see that there's more to them than that one narrative, okay? Because until people can stand in a different place and look at what they're doing, they can never, ever change because it encompasses them, right? Step number two, all of what I do is not the zero-sum thinking. As a matter of fact, I would exist without it. It's to take it outside of the person. So you turn it into a narrative, zero-sum thinking. You label the limited thinking that's allowed them to be radicalized into Trump world, right? And then you say, okay, we've labeled it zero-sum thinking, and you can exist without it. That narrative of zero-sum thinking is separate from you, all right? Now the third step, and this is the very hardest, my friends. This is the sort of thing that takes an honest person, and it is difficult. You have to agree with it. You have to find where zero-sum thinking, the way you're thinking, the way you're acting like things are zero-sum, all of the ways that this Trumpiness is a benefit to you, you need to be honest about it. And you need to accept yourself for acting and thinking that way. As long as you're trying to hide that mistaken thinking, as long as you're trying to pretend like, oh man, I really hate it, but I just keep doing, as long as that's the case, you will never come to a point where you can change. So you have to accept yourself, you have to help the other person accept themselves for how they're thinking in the zero-sum terms, and say, you know what, it's okay to be you. It makes sense that you're trying to make sense of a world that's changing. It makes sense that you are suffering economically. It makes sense that you're looking at other people getting so much more in a system that seems totally rigged and corrupt, and you're getting so much less. It makes sense that you would want to do something about that, right? And then when you can fully accept that, then you can problematize. You can talk about the problems with the narrative. Now, here's the hard part. No one starts these conversations except that they already thought, oh, there's a problem, right? I recognize that's an error in my thinking. I don't want to think that way. And everyone jumps over self-acceptance. They just beat themselves down with the problems over and over again. And so much so, they felt shame that they made them feel like the problem was them the whole time. But if you can help them see that it's just something they do sometimes, it's outside of them, and that they can accept themselves for doing that thing sometimes, then, only then you can say, okay, what are the problems? And that's what we're so good at, right? We can obviously see the problems. We can beat people over the head all day. Once we've done that, we help them go back into themselves and ask, where have I been someone different? Where have I given and seen more come back to me? Where have I not hurt somebody and it helped me? And you start finding these moments in their past and you get them to tell that story. where they haven't had that zero-sum thinking, and that allows them to go back and recreate themselves without that narrative. Now, here's the problem. Sometimes they say, actually, the negatives, they don't outweigh the benefits. And here's the honest part. Unless you're willing to walk away where the benefits outweigh the negatives and say, okay, I accept myself, I'll keep having that zero-sum thinking, until you're at that level of vulnerability, you haven't gotten to where you can change. But when you can honestly say, I see my benefits, I see my negatives, I could walk away right now happy with that narrative that I had, that zero-sum thinking. But the negatives do outweigh the positives. I do want to change. Then you can start finding those moments in someone's past for them to focus on, okay? And they can change the history they're living through, the history that they draw on, their own memories, what they're drawing on. You're not lying. You're not changing your memories. You're remembering, because all of our memories leave stuff on the cutting room floor. We're cutting our memories differently with a focus away from that narrative that we don't want anymore. And then finally, you need to join a community where you publicize and let everyone know, this is now the way I think about things. I am this person now. I have been this person many times before, and this is the way I act and do things. And so we took what the church has been hiding in terms of people changing. We turned it into a science. We laid out the narratives of it. And we learned this, and we had to learn this because there was an entire country called Germany full of Nazis. And we had to denazify them. And we were very successful. Very, very successful. But this knowledge has been lost. It's hidden up in my ivory tower. You have to be a senior at least, if not a graduate student. And even then, only around 200 people on the earth are doing this kind of work in organizational change. So no one knows. No one knows. Every once in a while, you'll find a counselor that might do this, and that's good. So that is how you de-Trumpify somebody. You find that one narrative, one of their mistakes in thinking, and you help them give it away. And by the time they've given away all of those stupid things that Donald Trump is doing to them, they're not Trumpified anymore.